So welcome to another live. I am Natasha from Nextwork here, and I am super excited to be doing another part of our DevOps series of AWS projects with you today. So I wonder where you are from the world. Please add it to the chat. Very excited to be doing this second part with you today. Let me jump straight into it and share my screen. Here you are. As you can see, I have my AWS Management Console on the left-hand side of my screen and the project step-by-step guide on the right-hand side of my screen. Today's project topic is called Setting Up a Git Repository with AWS CodeCommit. And like I've just teased just now, it is project number 2 in this AWS DevOps series. So if you haven't seen project 1 yet, I highly recommend doing that first before you jump into this project today. And even if you have a little bit of Git experience, I think it is definitely worthwhile doing this project to learn how AWS CodeCommit works. Why? Let's find out. Now, if you scroll down into our project guide, you're going to see that, let me zoom in so you can see this. As you scroll down this project guide, you will get a 30-second intro to this project. And in the 6-part project, you're creating a CI/CD pipeline to build and deploy a simple web application. By the end of all 6 projects, you will get that hands-on experience on how to use that AWS suite of code services to deliver that CI/CD pipeline. And that's why it's super important to get to know CodeCommit a little bit. You know, not only is it relevant in your cloud practitioner certification, it is also really good to learn how to set up a Git repository here so that it connects really well with the rest of your pipeline. Gabrielle in the chat says, hi, Nat. So saying hi back to you, Gabrielle. It is so good to see you here. Have you done part 1 of this project, or are you starting fresh today? So yeah, this is project 2 of the series, where you will learn how to store that web application source code in a repository. As always, if you want more projects, we have a whole series going on right now, and the most up-to-date list of projects will always be in the Nextwork community. If you're not in the Nextwork community yet, I highly recommend that you join. The link to join the community is in the description box in this video, and that is how you will find the step-by-step guide that I'm opening on the right-hand side of my screen today as well. Wow, Ruben and Jong are also saying hi. It is so lovely to have you here. Thanks so much. Are you both also starting fresh today, like Gabrielle? Well, since we have a few people starting fresh today, maybe we can start from the top into this project. So how about I literally sign out of my AWS console so we're all starting from the same place. And in today's project, like always, I will be using option 2, which is to give me that step-by-step guide, because this option is great if you're new to AWS. Maybe you're not sure where to start. You really want someone to just give you that, like, click here, switch tabs, click there, like that kind of specific instructions. Option 1 is definitely for you if you like to just roam around. Imagine if I was saying, like, create this, but I don't really tell you where to click. But you find that challenge fun and you want to take that on, go for option 1. In the meantime, we're going to use option 2 today. Alrighty, we're here in option 2 now. So let's get ready to set up a Git repository with AWS CodeCommit. Ruben also says, total noob. I feel that so hard. All right, so I know it's always really exciting to just want to dive straight into the console and start creating, whatever you're creating today in the console. But let's start by getting ready to document today. So a heads up, you will need a Canva account to edit this template, but once you create your Canva account, it becomes really easy. So all you have to do here is just click on this link that's called make a copy of this documentation template, and here it is. Click on that link. And voila, you will already see that there's a documentation template ready for you to fill in and share all of your learnings about today's project. Super handy, and all you have to do, again, in that top right-hand corner, let us select make a copy. And here we go. So this copy is a copy that you can edit. So this is where you have like complete creative control over how you want to create your project documentation today. Let me just remove this default page so that your first page is the title slide here. And to get yourself warmed up with using Canva or this documentation template, just change your full name here into your actual full name, okay? And just like that, you will be using this template to fill in a lot of your learnings across this project. But yeah, let's get started by setting up a web app in the cloud. Now, this whole step 1, was an entire project, and that was project 1 of this DevOps series. I repeat, what we're doing step 1 was an entire project in project 1. So if you see that I'm going through step 1 a bit quickly, it's because the detailed step-by-step kind of let's do this project, one step at a time kind of vibe was already done when we were doing project 1 of this DevOps series. So if you see that I'm going through this a bit quickly, no worries. That slower version is in the previous project's YouTube live demo as well. Now, step 1 does say that you should log into your IAM admin user, which means you should open up the admin user that you've created from the last project. But if you don't have an IAM user set up yet, or you're like Gabrielle and you're kind of starting fresh, you haven't done project 1, here are the steps to create one. Okay, step number 1, head to your AWS account as the root user. So let's do that. You can just head to your AWS account as a root user just by clicking on that link straight away. So it's a pretty nice, handy shortcut. Oh, actually, this link takes you to your IAM user, actually. So you have to click here that says sign in using root user email. So let's click here. There you go. So this is the login page that you want to be seeing. And then log into your root user email address. Now, I have my account details saved somewhere handy here. So I am just going to sign in with my root user email address and password, all done, multi-factor authentication tick, and I'm signed in now. So the first step that we're going to do to create our IAM user is to navigate to the IAM user console here. So you just have to search IAM and you click it open. Now, once you have that open, all you have to do is in that left-hand navigation panel, oh, this might be harder to replicate. Okay. Oh, okay. So when you click here, there is a left-hand navigation panel, and you just click on users, and you can create your IAM user right away. As you can see, we already have a few IAM users in my account because we have done this once or twice. But if you're doing this for the first time, this entire panel might have nothing in it, and that's completely okay. That's what you should expect if you haven't created an IAM user before. So we'll just click on Create User here, and let's create a user. Now, pause here. You might be wondering, why are we creating a user in the first place? The reason for that is because not every single part of this project can be done with your root user, and that is completely for security purposes. Your root user is great for billing purposes. It is almost, think of it as the main account that all of these other IAM users will shoot off of. And always to protect your IAM user, AWS highly recommends that you do your day-to-day activities from an IAM user, not from the root user, your main account. And this main account is kind of like the default account that gets created when you first create your AWS account. So if you've been doing a lot of projects just from your main account, that means you are using your root user to do all of these day-to-day activities. Let's level up by creating an IAM user to protect our main account so that if any security breaches happen, it is just happening to this side user that we've created for day-to-day purposes. And seriously, later on in this DevOps series of projects, there are literally going to be a few things you won't be able to do with your root user account, and that is done on purpose by AWS for security purposes as well. So absolutely start by creating your IAM user. If you don't have one, it is okay to create one, start from scratch together. Robinson RE also waves hi, by the way, so waving hi back. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to doing this project with you. So when you create your IAM user, all you have to do is use this name. It says your name, IAM admin, and I'm just going to do net IAM admin, and select that checkbox for provide user access to the AWS management console. And then we'll just use the auto-generated password. That's completely okay. And click next at the bottom here. Actually, there's a checkbox that says users must create a new password at next sign-in. Just to save us time for this demo today, I'm going to uncheck that. I don't need to create a new password for this specific IAM user, but you can totally leave that checked if you prefer, creating a custom password when you log into your new IAM user for the first time. Now, for the permissions options, we will just say attach policies directly. And that basically means that we're going to be using permission policies, which is like permission rules that AWS has already preset for us. Trust me that AWS probably knows permission policies better than I do as a complete beginner, and it is totally okay to be using preset policies. Honestly, they are very, very well done. You can completely trust what's already done as a default here. So from that list here, let's select administrator access. You actually don't even need to search for it because it's at just number 2 here. And make sure you're choosing administrator access stop. There are a few other ones that shoot off of that, but just click the one that's second on your list. And we're going to scroll down and then click next here. And just like that, you're ready to create your IAM user. So let's create the user. Voila, it is done. Okay. And when you've created your user, stay on this page. Don't leave this page yet, stay here, because the retrieve password, this page is extremely important. What you want to do is you want to download the password, your IAM user's sign-on details in a CSV file, because in the future, when you're using your IAM user again, it's actually very, very hard for you to find your password, because for security purposes, AWS doesn't really store it in an easy to find way. You almost have to reset your password if you can't find it anymore. So let's just make sure we have a copy of our new users, IAM users, like username and password, and download it. Okay, and when you have that copy, you're ready to move on. So I have my copy now. I've downloaded the CSV file. And next, I'm going to copy the console sign-in URL. So it's right over here. And let's copy that. Okay, and now we are ready to log back into our AWS account, not as the root user anymore, but as the IAM user. So first, of course, we'll have to log out. So we'll sign out. So we're no longer using our root user account. And then with the console sign-in URL I just copied, I'm going to paste that into my browser. So I've pasted that now here. Press enter, and now you're back into the AWS sign-on page, but now you're going to log in as the IAM user. So again, how do you log in? Well, those details would have been the username and password you've just downloaded into the CSV file. So let's find that file now. In my downloads folder, it is the number 1 thing that pops up here. So I just click on that download. And voila, I have a spreadsheet that has my IAM users sign-in details ready for me to use. So I'm going to copy that username, which is the IAM admin username I've already set for myself. And this is the generated password that AWS has created for me. So thank you so much, AWS. I will be using this password to log in. And voila, click sign in, and you should have access back to your AWS account right away. Very cool. So here we are back into the AWS account. You won't see anything different on your page because administrator access pretty much has access to all the things in the AWS account, just except for some sensitive billing information usually. But what that means is you still have free reign, across all of the different services and resources that you can create. Yeah. Please, please, please make sure you log into the IAM admin user instead of the root user. Too many times I will see people that log in as their root user because they're like, I cannot be bothered. I'm just going to log in as my root user to do this project. And they get stuck later on in this project because there are specific things that you can't do as the root user that you have to use your IAM admin user to complete. So let's get in the habit of logging in as the admin user as soon as possible. Cool beans. All right. So we're still in the setup phase here, but all good. Let's do the next part of our setup phase, and that is to create a Cloud 9 environment. Again, this is going to be something that you'll see a lot. You'll learn a lot more in detail if you head to part 1 of this DevOps series and the YouTube live demo for that one. But in short, Cloud9 is an IDE that lives in the cloud. So that means that developers will use Cloud9 to develop, manage, edit their code in the cloud. The difference between Cloud9 and most other IDEs is that Cloud9, because it's hosted in the cloud, you won't ever need to download and install something to be able to manage and edit your code. You can do it all in your browser. Cool. So once you're headed into your Cloud9 console, make sure you're using the AWS region that's close to you. I'm going to use Oregon. And then we're going to create an environment. So I've clicked on Create Environment already. And name your environment Network IDE. And just like that, you can scroll down and choose, oh, instead of choosing next step right away, sorry, that's my bad. That's a typo that should be removed. What we'll do next is under the environment type, select new EC2 instance. That's what we've chosen. And for the instance type, tier 2 micro, make sure you're using this because that's free tier eligible, and make sure that the project is free for you. And then for platform, change this, all right? Let's change this from Amazon Linux 2023 to Amazon Linux 2. This change is super important for you to be able to continue the rest of this project as well. All right. I think just like that, you are finally ready to create your environment. And Gerald, hi Gerald, says, hi Natasha, just checking in. Oh, I'm so happy that you're here today, Gerald. Thanks so much for being here. I'm stoked. Now, the first time you create an environment and the first time you open that environment is honestly going to take a bit of time. So I'm going to open this as soon as I can because sometimes it takes a bit of time for this to load. Okay, it's gonna be in this loading state for about 1 to 2 minutes. It's not going to be instant, but it's okay. We got each other as company. So we're going to let that load. Now, while that's loading, again, I'm going to quickly brief you through some of the steps that we're going to be doing next. Next, we're going to be creating a web app that's going to live in the cloud, using Cloud9. So what we're going to do with Cloud9 is we're going to install Maven and Java. And Maven and Java are two tools that will help us with creating that Java web app. Awesome. And the web app we're creating is actually completely from scratch. So you're not going to be like copying and pasting like a web app that's already been created for you that you're just kind of like pulling in and starting from, I guess, like something that's already been created. You're technically doing this all from scratch, which is going to be quite exciting, I feel. So you're going to be doing something from the ground up, together. All right. So we have Cloud9 open in front of us right now. And my screen's looking a bit smushed, so I'm going to expand this so you can see this a bit clearly. But this is what most IDEs look like. And this is your Cloud9 development environment. If this is your first time seeing an IDE, here's a quick breakdown. On the left-hand side here is kind of like a file navigation system, like some people call it a directory. And this is basically where you will see all of the files relevant to this environment. And then in the middle here is kind of like an editor section. We'll be using this section very, very soon, but not right now. What we'll be using straight away is this bottom panel, which is called the terminal. So think of your terminal as a control panel that will help you with downloading tools that you need and also help you with kind of navigating through your environment and your web app project. So I feel like sometimes IDEs can feel a little bit overwhelming to see for the very first time, but do know that IDEs are absolutely being used in the real world by many, many developers across the world. And the other thing to know is, honestly, at the end of the day, it is very, very similar to using like a text editor, except instead of a text editor, right now we're using like a code editor. Think of it in that way. For example, like if you've ever used like Google Docs or Google Drive, you would have been familiar with maybe like having to click through lots of folders. And that's exactly like the file navigator here. It's basically a list view of like folders of files. And in here, if you've ever used Google Docs or like a spreadsheet, that's basically the editor panel here. It's just like your working area where you're creating things, you're editing things, you're managing things. And in the bottom panel here, it's kind of like whenever you're using Google Drive, you have to manage like the settings sometimes. You might need to like download new things into Google Drive. You might need to Like say you might need to like move some files around, and that is definitely something that you get to do in the terminal as well. So like I mentioned before, the terminal is going to be something that we're going to be using a lot of at the start of this project and starting now. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Apache Maven using the commands here. So we're just going to highlight that and install it right away. And just like that, it's getting installed right away. So as you can see here, things are moving very, very quickly in our terminal. Right after I pasted these commands, it's just gone boom, 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 boom. It is installing a lot of things for me. Apache Maven is going to be our package manager. You can think of it as the manager that helps us with building the web app that we're about to build. And it is absolutely going to help us with installing a few important tools that we'll need to be able to run the web app as well. All right, it is still downloading. Oh my gosh, Udawak, promise. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it that you're here today. Wow, I'm stoked. All right, so we've just ran the commands, and next we're going to install Java. So with Java, again, all we have to do is highlight the code that's already being given, and we paste that into the terminal, and off it goes. It starts like running all of the commands that we've put in here. If you want like a slower version that explains through every single line that we're putting in, please visit the first part of this DevOps series, the video for that. We will go through all of these lines like slowly so that there's a bit more of an explanation. For now, though, we are going to be speed running this part a little bit quickly so that we get to the new parts of this project as soon as possible. Okay, so what we've just done is we've installed Maven, we've installed Java, and it's always great to check after you've installed things whether you've installed the right thing. And how we're going to do that is we're first going to check the version of Java that we've installed. So we're going to go Java-version. And ta-da! It is giving me the right version that I want to see, which is 1.8.0. And next, we're going to check the version of Maven that we've installed, which is very, very simple. It's just MVN and then -v. V for version. Perfect. It's giving me the perfect numbers that I want to see as well. Maven 3.5.2. That's amazing. So we have the right version of Java and Maven. We're ready to move on. So the next part is to create the actual web application. So we're going to use Maven to generate a sample Java web app. And to do that, we just have to copy and paste in these commands here. And then we're going to paste it in here. Boom. And off it goes. It's going to start creating the Java web app. And you're going to see the terminal get really busy again while it creates all of that. Okay. Yeah, it's looking pretty busy now. But in the flurry of all of these little, this text is coming through in the terminal, it is basically the terminal kind of reporting to us the progress of creating that web application. Cool. Now, let's check the left-hand side of our terminal. Sorry, not the terminal, but left-hand side of Cloud9, you're going to see that there's a little folder that pops up, and it's called Network Web Project. Ooh, okay, something's happening here. To continue to expand on the folders, just click on the little arrows on the left-hand side of the folder icon, and then you're going to see that, whoa, like folders and folders and folders of things have already been set up for us. Like all from just us running, this piece of code here. So this is basically Maven, the tool we installed, being able to generate a web app from us, a Java web app, using Archetype, which is like a template that they have. Now, this is super helpful for us because it means that all of these folders and stuff has already been laid out for us. In terms of the actual meat, like the content that's inside your web app, you're still going to be creating that by yourself, but it's nice to have some of the infrastructure like already set up for you. Cool. So with that, I think we're almost ready to just kick off the meat of today's project, which is going to be quite fun. All right. Okay, so let's head back into the project steps. And one of the last parts of the, I guess, like the setting up part of today's project is to modify index.jsp to customize the HTML code to make it your own. You can customize the file by double-clicking on it in the File Explorer. Don't forget to replace your name from the following code with your name. Sometimes I get a bit trigger happy with copying and pasting that the placeholder text just ends up getting copied in there too. But yeah, you can see that index.jsp is right here. Let's double click on that. Oh, okay, and if you can't see anything like me right now, it's because the terminal is taking up too much space. So remember how our IDE is split into 3 sections, the file navigator, the terminal, and the editor space. Sometimes you have to drag it down. You see this blue line? You just have to drag it down. It's like unveiling something with a curtain. But yeah, now we're in the editor space for index.jsp, and we can start editing the code with the following. All right, so I'm going to copy that in, and I'm going to paste it through. Perfect. Again, don't forget to replace your name with your name. So let's do that right now. Hello, Natasha. This is my Nextwork web application working. We love to hear it. Don't forget to save your changes. So please press Command S or Control S on your keyboard. Done. Saved. The moment it's saved, you'll see that there was a little circle here, and that would have meant that there are some unsaved changes. Once you save it, that little circle disappears. So that's some really good visual validation of what you're doing. Nice work. We've just completed the setup phase for today's project. We're now going to dive in to all the new parts of this project that the previous project didn't cover. So in the next phase, we're now going to try store our code in a Git repository. So what is source code and what is Git repository? Source code is the code written by programmers, in a programming language like Java, and includes the logic, the instructions that define how the application behaves and it operates. It's what you write to make your app do things. Like, for example, if your app knows how to calculate numbers or display a web page, then the source code is the code that defines that. So, for example, index.jsp is an example of my source code because it defines the web page that I'm going to want to display with my web app. Note that source code works tightly with Maven, and Maven helps you build and compile that source code so that it can run efficiently. Next, you might be wondering, what is Git? And Git is the version control system, which means it helps developers like you. You're a developer. It helps developers with tracking changes in their code. Now, if you've ever used, for example, Word, or you've ever used Google Docs to edit and manage your documents, you might have noticed that there's a feature that helps you with version control, which means that you can roll back to a previous version of the exact same document if you've ever made some major oopsies that you want to kind of reverse. And the same kind of goes with Git. It is a version control system for developers and their projects and their code so that they are able to track all the changes that happen. They're able to collaborate by seeing who's made what change. And they're able to reverse and roll back to previous versions of their code if anything requires rolling back. Now, we've just covered some 2 big topics, source code and Git. And next is the Git repository. So we've just learned that Git is a version control system. Then what is a Git repository? A Git repository is like a folder for your project's files. And just now we were talking about Google Docs and Google Drive. So if Git is like the system for you to be able to store everything in Google Drive, a Git repository is like one of those Google Drive folders that you have in your workspace. Now, there are lots of benefits with having a Git repository. First of all, it's used as a directory, so it's used to help organize all of your files into folders. You'll be able to store it in a place where they're all neatly organized in folders. Developers can use the Git repository to track their changes, and yeah, because all of the changes are being tracked, you can always reverse into a previous version if something gets deleted, or if something a major change causes something to break, and you're like, oh, okay, let's go back to the previous version that wasn't broken. Cool beans. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a repository. So we've just learned what a Git repository is. Let's create one right away. The service we're going to be using to create that Git repository is called AWS CodeCommit. Now, AWS CodeCommit is a service that lets you host Git repositories in the cloud. And cloud Git repository setups are really, really popular in today's world because it lets multiple developers work together online while updating this repository that is able to sync up everybody's work and make sure that everybody's using the most updated version of the code. So in this lab, we are going to be just using that CodeCommit repository to store all of the Java code relevant to our web project here. You know, we have our web app project in this space right now, but there's no actual repository that's storing all of our work in a safe place online. So we want to be able to do that with CodeCommit. So how we're going to do this is we're going to go back to the console. So oops. Oopsie daisies. Aha. 1 second. I just need to be able to show my tabs. How do I do this? Replace. Oh, okay. I think how we're going to do this is we're just going to flick back to the tab with our AWS console over here. And then when you're searching for it, let's search for AWS CodeCommit over here. Nice. Let's click on that. And please don't forget to stay in the same region that you were in. I'm at Oregon, so I'm going to stay in Oregon. And we're going to create the repository. Name your repository Network Web Project. It's basically just like naming a folder in Google Drive, so there's no stress in making this name perfect. And then add your description. Our description is, you know, this folder is going to be keeping literally all of the files for my web application. So I'm just going to describe it in a very straightforward way. It's a web application for the Network homepage. Now you can also use tags to further organize your stuff. This is an optional step, but you can also use tags to be like, oh, this repository belongs to the DevOps team, for example. Now, before we move on, let's take a screenshot of the setup page of the Create Repository page, which looks like this. And let's put that screenshot in our documentation. Okay, so over here, let's take that screenshot. I think that looks okay. I think I'm going to make it look like this. Very nice. And we're going to head straight to the slide titled Create a Git Repository in our documentation template to fill that in. Oof. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to head to the slide titled Create a Git Repository. And let's fill that in right now. Nice. So whenever I paste my screenshot, the first thing I want to do is put that into the frame that's already prepared in my documentation template. So once you've pasted your screenshot, just drag it and boom, it fits right in. So good. That's so easy. And the next thing we're going to do is fill out the prompts. Okay. All right. Always, always, always just know that your definitions don't have to be perfect from the get-go. It's all about just sharing your learnings. So I'm going to call Git a version control and code management system that helps developers with tracking their changes and collaborating on code together. A Git repository is like a folder that contains all of an application. Oh, I think I'm gonna minimize my window so you can see more of this. A Git repository is like a folder that contains all of an application or project's files in one place. To create a Git repository in the cloud, I used, what was the name of the AWS service you used? Can you remember? Can you remember? It was called CodeCommit. I used CodeCommit. Perfect, that was it. And that is the first page of our documentation done. Just like that. I think that took less than 3 minutes. Do you think so? Did anyone time me? I think that should have been around 3 minutes, maybe. But yeah, just like that, we're ready to head back into the next step of our project. So let's do that right away. And what is our next step, I wonder? Let's see. Okay. All right. The next step is to click create. So let's create the repository now that we've set it all up. Okay, very cool. Once we've created it, we're ready for the very first commit. It might feel a little bit technical, these words, but we are going to be breaking these words down word for word, word by word. So no worries at all if it's like, oh, this is feeling a bit technical. Trust me that this is something you can absolutely learn as a complete beginner as well. Cool. Next thing we're going to do, now that we've created our repository, is we're going to head back to our environment and see Git working in action. Let's head back to the working environment, which is your Cloud9. So this is the place where you're editing things, you're managing things, and you can think of CodeCommit as a place where you're like saving things, like you're saving your changes. Cool. Now that we're back, let us head back to the terminal. Oops, over here. This is our very cool terminal. Ooh, and I'm using the wrong, there we go. Okay. Oh, this is looking a bit spicy. Sorry, guys. But okay, I have reformatted my page a bit so you can see this a bit more clearly. But in our terminal, we're going to run a few commands to set up Git in there as well. So the first thing we're going to do is say git config -- global space user dot name and put in your name. So my name is Natasha. I'm going to put it like this. Okay, and it's not going to have a bit of a response. You can see that doesn't really say anything back to you, but the fact that there are no error messages is a pretty good sign. So let's move on to the next line. Git config -- global space user dot email and then put in your email. So I'm Natasha at nixwork.org. You can always email me if you have any questions, by the way. And let's press enter. So what is that we've just ran? Okay, I see git config, global username, your name, your email. This is quite interesting. So what's happening is we're actually setting up a Git identity by running those two lines. Think of a Git identity like a user profile. A Git identity is basically how Git, which is our version control system, it's how Git will recognize who was making those changes to a repository. So when you set up your username and your email in Git, which is what we did by running this line with user.name Natasha and then user.email, your email, every commit you make now will include the information. So it's basically Git saying, oh, okay, we have someone called Natasha with this email. And now with every change that you make, it's going to be like, Natasha with this email made this change. Natasha with this email made this change. And it also lets other people know who made those changes. So if anyone ever visits your Git repository, your folder of changes, it's going to see basically almost like a tracked history of Natasha with this email made this change in this time. So you can think of it as a way for you to almost leave a paper trail of who you are and all those changes that you're making in your Git repository. I'm going to call out right now that there's a word that we haven't really defined yet, so let's talk about this word. You might not be familiar with the word commit. So hi, Max, by the way. I see Max saying you're awesome, Nat. Thank you so much. Now, a commit is basically like pressing the save button. Think of it that way. So every time you press the save button, Git is using your identities, name and email to like save those changes. Cool. Okay, we're going to keep tracking on with our project. So what we've just done Okay, we have just created a Git repository in the cloud using CodeCommit, and now we've just gone back into our working section, this terminal, and put in our username and our email to register ourselves with Git. Next, we're going to head to this interesting place by running this command. Okay, so what is this interesting place? This is basically the terminal's way to say that you're entering a folder. Okay, so whenever you see this little squiggly line, there's a /environment /Nextwork Web Project, just know that this is basically the terminal's way of saying we're going to click into this folder. Okay. We might be very, very familiar with using a mouse and point and click, but unfortunately, a terminal doesn't have hands, okay? A terminal is going to have to use words to say everything that it wants to do. It might be very easy for us to be like, well, I can just click here, right? Well, a terminal doesn't really have that same capability. So we're going to help it out by using words to define that we want to now kind of head into this folder called Nextwork Web Project. And this is the folder that contains all of the files for our web app. Cool. So let's run this now in our terminal and press enter. Don't forget. Okay. And once you run it, you'll see that the blue words literally change from environment to environment Nextwork Web Project. What does that mean? It means you've successfully entered this folder with the terminal now. So the terminal is now entered into the folder. Great stuff. It's done. And yeah, handy tip. CD means change directory. It's basically saying, jump into this file, change the directory that you're at. Okay, now that we are inside this folder as our terminal, what should we do next? The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to initialize something called a local repo or a local repository by running this next command. So let me run this next command first, and then we're going to talk about what this command means. First of all, though, let me just copy this command, and let me just put that in the terminal again. Paste it. Done. That was it. That was very fast. So the moment I pasted that, it says initialized empty Git repository in blah, 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 blah. There's like another way for the terminal to explain which folder it's at. But what just happened here? So in this command, we have a few keywords here. There's git, init, b, main. Okay, interesting stuff. So git init is a command that you use in the terminal to start a new repository. When you start a new Git project in your Cloud9 environment, it begins to keep track of all of the changes you make in your project folder, which is basically the folder that we just navigated into, Nextwork Web Project. We call this a local repository that we just created. You know, what we created just now was a local repository because it's like a personal notebook where you jot down the changes before you're ready to share them. Okay, so what we've created just now is like a private repository, like a private folder. And what we created the step before in CodeCommit was like, you can think of it as a main repository, which is called the origin. So the main repository is the one that is living in the cloud that other people can also see, and that you will push your changes from your private notebook to that main repository in the cloud, the one that you've set up in CodeCommit, once you're ready for those changes to be kind of made public, or like you're ready to save that permanently. So now we have our own repository here locally, and we've also just created a repository in the cloud. So how do they know that those two repositories are actually connected and are also going to be about the same web project? So what we're going to do now is do that connection, set that connection up. So back in the CodeCommit console, we're going to select clone URL. Right now we're in the Cloud9 console, so you have to switch tabs back to whichever tab has your CodeCommit console, which is this page here. Okay, and we're going to select clone URL and select clone HTTPS. Automatically, the repository's URL is in your clipboard. So we've just copied basically the link to this this Git repository that lives in the cloud that we've just created with CodeCommit. So we have that URL now. We are actually ready to just head straight back here into our Cloud9 console and continue. So the URL that we've just copied should have the following format. You can always paste your URL into your browser to confirm that. So does it have the same format? It does, it starts with the region, US West 2. And then there is Amazon, the AWS, continue, repos, and then my project name, which is Next Web Project. So it is completely the perfect URL that we're looking for. And next, now, in the Cloud9 terminal, we're going to set the remote origin to the CodeCommit URL you just copied earlier. Lawrence asked a very good question right now in the chat. Is Cloud9 a free tool? Yes, it is. It is a free tool that's covered in the free tier. Again, make sure you delete your resources at the end of the project to keep it free. Always just make it a good practice to delete things at the end. While you're using it, though, it's completely free. You can always check if something is a free tool, by the way, if you just search AWS free tier and then insert the service name, for example, in this case, Cloud9, and that always gives you a little tip in terms of whether or not something is free as well. Lawrence says, will do. Shout out to you, Lawrence. Masuma in the chat says, hi, Natasha, is this recorded? Unfortunately, I joined late and missed quite a bit. Would love to catch up. Masuma, sending lots of love to you. And yes, this is completely recorded. Right after this live, you'll be able to see a YouTube link that takes you to this entire recording. So you can absolutely catch up then. Thanks so much for being here, by the way, to Masuma, to Lawrence. It's so cool to have you here as well. Cool beans. We're going to jump straight back into the project now. And here we're saying, we are now going to set the remote origin to the URL we just copied. So how we do that is in the terminal. Oh, Masuma says, keep up the great work. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. We're going to use in our terminal this command called git remote add origin and paste in the URL you just copied. Boom, done. Okay, that change has already been made. But you might also be wondering, okay, what did we just do just now? What is git remote add origin? What do you mean by setting the remote origin to the git commit URL? So let's pull it back and let's start to understand what we've just done. So think of origin as Git as the main home for your project's files. It's where everyone's work comes together like a shared Google Drive folder. In this command, we're telling the terminal that the origin for our local repo is a CodeCommit repository. So again, we've created a repository that's within the terminal, and we also have a repository that's in CodeCommit that's up there in the cloud. And that CodeCommit repository that's in the cloud is the main home for all of your files. Because our origin is hosted online in the cloud, we tell the terminal git remote at origin. Remote being it's in the cloud, it's online. It's not in my computer, it's in the cloud. So again, what's that difference between the remote origin, the one that's in the cloud, and the local repo, the one that's in my terminal that I just initialized? So why do we have two different repos? Why can't we just have one? Is basically what this question is trying to say. Imagine you decide to download a shared Google Drive folder. Okay, you download a folder from Google Drive into your laptop, and you decide to edit those documents that you downloaded locally in your computer, in your downloaded copy. So would others see your edits in the shared Google Drive folder once you started editing like locally in your copy? No, they wouldn't. You would have just made those edits privately in copies of those shared documents. The people that are like still accessing the documents from the Google Drive won't be able to see your changes because those changes did not go from your local computer into the one that's in the cloud. So again, like the repository you've just initialized in Cloud9 is just like that downloaded folder in your computer. It works as a copy of what's in the cloud, but you will need to find a way, after you've made your edits to your local copy, you need to find a way to save those edits and push that back into the cloud. So how we do that is by committing. Commit is like the press save, and then pushing is like the pushing it up from your local repository and into what's in the cloud, in CodeCommit. So how we're going to do that is we're going to do git add dot. This is the first command you run in your terminal. Next, you're going to run git commit -m, and then there's a little message called initial commit updated index.jsp. Okay, we're going to run that next. Okay, and then once you run that, it literally says, oh, you've changed 3 files. You inserted 39 lines. You know, what files have you created? You created something called pom.xml, web.xml. There's also index.jsp, which are exactly the files that were created, these 3 files that were created when we ran that command that created that Java web app automatically for us. And then next, we're going to run this line that says git push -u origin main. Okay, so with these 3 lines, we're basically saying, okay, let's add all of our files into a saving area. Let's put it into an area where the changes you've made in your working directory in your local repo are prepared and organized before you commit them to your project's history. So it's basically saying, I'm going to prepare all of these files that I've just changed into this space to ready them for saving. And when you say git commit, that's like pushing the save button. You're like, okay, I'm going to save these changes that I've made. And then there's also a comment. -m means message. Okay, M stands for message. And you will use this message basically as a description to describe what are the changes you've made. And the message that we're going to use is initial commit, which is like an iconic commit message to say, I've created a new thing. And then you've also updated index.jsp. Remember? Don't forget that at the very start, you actually added this piece of code. So we're going to add that to our description as well. Cool. We have a few interesting comments happening in the chat right now, so I love to call them out. Ludovic says, great lecture. Thank you so much. Gabrielle says, you can use git remote -v to validate that your local and remote repo see each other. That's really cool. Oh, I love that. Do you think we can run that right now just to see if that works? Just to see if that works for my git remote -v. Oh, this is cool. This is cool. Oh, that's awesome. Git remote -v, and all of a sudden, boom, you can see that there's a link to my CodeCommit repository, which is the main origin, the remote origin that we've just set in the previous step. Wow, Gabrielle, that is such a cool hint. Thanks so much. Yeah, so when I added the git remote at origin, I've made that connection. And what Gabrielle has suggested in the chat to use git remote -v validates that those two can now see each other. I love it. Raphael in the chat says, if I don't include -u origin main, won't it work with only git push? I used only git push and I kept getting fatal error. Very, very good point, Raphael. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to continue with my work, and then I'll explain the error that you've made in a second as well. So where did I leave off? I left off by putting through git push -u origin main. Okay, cool. So we were about to explain that command, which is the last command in here. So what does it actually mean? This command is really handy for your first upload of changes to your origin, i.e. The origin being the CodeCommit repo that lives in the cloud. -u stands for upstream, and it means you're telling Git where you want to save your committed changes. Okay, so it's basically saying, okay, I have committed some changes, I've saved it, I'm going to push it somewhere upstream. And origin is the name of the main repository. So origin here is basically saying I'm going to push it upstream to my origin. And before, we've also just said remote origin is the repository that's in the cloud. So we're basically saying I'm going to push upstream my changes into the repository in the cloud. And there's also main at the end. So main is the name of the folder, or it's also called the name of the subdirectory or the branch. If you're familiar with Git terms, it's also called a branch that has been created in the main repository to store like the new files that you've created. You won't need to state -u origin main the next time you push your changes. So Raphael, you won't need to include -u origin main after you've done this in the first git push that you do. So in the first git push you do, absolutely do the entire command is my recommendation. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to do git push for the remainder, for the remaining commands the next time you want to push something. Yeah, DKAMX. Welcome back, by the way. It's so good to see you again. It was awesome to have you in the previous live. DKAMX have said a wonderful comment. In general, when you set the upstream, it should remember that local main will push to origin main. Yeah. So what DKAMX is also saying is, once you've set up -u origin main the first time, the next time Git will remember those settings, so you don't need to say that again. The next time you just have to say git push, and it's going to remember the settings you've already set up the first time. So Raphael, try using this full command for the first time you push your changes, and then let us know if that works. Cool beans. Hooray! You should now be able to refresh your code commit page in the AWS console and see the newly created files. Is that true? Is that true? Should we find out? Let's find out. Alrighty. Let's find out by going back into our CodeCommit repository. You can exit out those banners now if you want to clear up your screen. And let's refresh the page. Do you think we're going to see all of the files we've just created in here now? Is it true? It sure is. So what you can do here, do you see how main is here? The main branch that we've just referenced is right over here as well. So it's cool to always see references between the terminal and in a more visual interface like this to like just connect the concepts that you're learning, right? Because here in our IDE, we can see basically that folder of files relevant to our web app. And look at that, src and pom.xml. Does this look familiar? It's because it's also what you see right here. So what's happening right now is we have our local repository that's kind of like our local workspace of different folders and files. And then we have our code commit repository that's in the cloud that is basically like the main home, the main the main vault, or like the main saved area for our project. And what just happened is we've pushed all of the changes from our local repository over here. So we've pushed all of those changes into what is in the cloud. So that's why you can see it now in our code commit repository. It's basically been pushed upstream into here. So that's awesome to see. And if you'd like to see everything else, you can even click into the folder. Don't forget that src here is a folder that you can expand like this. You can do the same thing in your code commit repository. Click into src, and you're going to see it works. It has the exact same structure as the folder in our Cloud9 IDE. So if you click into main as well, right, you can click into web app. Again, like this folder structure is exactly the same. src, main, you can click into web app. And voila, you're going to, at the end of this road, well, almost the end of this road, you can see the index.jsp file. This is awesome. You can literally see, oh, I accidentally clicked the wrong thing there. Let's just exit out of that. But you can actually literally see the index.jsp file that you edited yourself now displaying in CodeCommit. So this is really cool. I am very excited to now document all of my learnings over the past step. Didn't that feel like a huge step where you just learned a lot in one go? Like if you've never used Git before, you've now learned, what is Git? You've learned what is a Git repository. You've learned how to add something, commit, and push your changes. You know what a local repository means. You know what a remote origin repository means. You've learned a lot. You've learned a lot, my friend. So let us take a screenshot and start documenting these learnings. Whew. So the screenshot we're going to take is a screenshot of actually just that first folder, or like that kind of main repository, the main directory that you see. Okay, took a screenshot of that. And we're going to flick to the slide that says my first commit in the documentation template. So let's find that here, my first commit. And let's paste our screenshot in here. Floop. Let's paste our screenshot in here and start filling out the prompts. Aha. Okay, I'm going to shimmy my screenshots so that you can see the whole thing in the frame. Very nice. And again, let's fill in the prompts. Cool. First prompt says, I initialized a Git repo in my web application by... What was the command you ran to initialize a Git repo in your Cloud9 IDE? Okay, so to find that command, let's look at the steps that we ran, and let's add that in. So in which step did we run in which step did we initialize the Git repo in our Cloud9 IDE? Okay, option A. Was it this line, git remote at origin plus the URL? Was it this line, option A? Or option B, was it git init b main? Was it this line? Or option C, is it this line where you're using cd and then there's like this interesting folder name? Which one is it? Okay, again, option A. Option A, git remote at origin, and there's like a space for HTTPS. Is it option B, which is git init b main? Or is it option C, which is cd, which is change directory, and then there's also there's also a little reference to a folder here. All right, so Gabrielle in the chat has said the perfect answer. So thank you so much. Shout out to Gabrielle. It is option B. Option B, git init b main, was the command that we ran to initialize a local repository in our Cloud9 IDE. So I'm just going to paste that in here. Okay, so that was the command I ran. And next, let's make it a proper sentence by running the command. To commit and push my code, I'll have to run 3 different commands in order. Ooh. Do you remember what those 3 commands were? No worries if you don't, because I feel like the first time you learn it, it might be a little bit like, oh my gosh, there's so many words all over the place. But these were the 3 commands we had to run. Okay, the first command is git add. Second command was git commit. The third command was git push. So let's also just add a little bit of spice by explaining what these commands mean. So git add, again, if you're stuck, you can also, use the hints here, but I will just write it, let's wing it. Let's add our own ways of explaining how we understood this. Git add places the files that I've created, edited in a staging area, i.e. preparing them to be saved. Git commit is like pushing the save button. That confirms my changes. That confirms my changes. Cool. Oopsie daisies. Okay, and next we have git push. So git push. Is it cheating to say git push pushes? A little bit. Okay, maybe I shouldn't do that. Git push. Now I'm trying to figure out what's an alternative to the word push. Let's say git push moves. Gabrielle has a very great suggestion. Git push uploads. I love that one. Updates or changes to the cloud. Wow, you guys have some really great suggestions here. Uploads, updates, my changes to my remote origin, i.e. the code commit repository I've set up. Oof! Gabrielle also has another fire suggestion. Sends your code upstream. Should I do that? I'm so greedy. I want all of these that we've suggested because they're all so good. But okay, DKAMX also upvotes, sends your code upstream. So I'm going to make that the final version. Git push sends my changes upstream to my remote origin, which is the CodeCommit repository I've set up. I love it. Thank you so much for writing this with me. That was awesome. I love it. Oh, that makes me so happy. This is really cool. All right, I'm going to send my notes and send the step-by-step guide right back to the right-hand side of my screen. Okay, very cool. Okay, we're about to reach the final sprint of today's project. So let's talk about it. Thank you for sticking with me as I navigate these two windows that continuously just expand and minimize in size, or I increase or I just switch my tabs around. I appreciate your patience very much. And we're gonna go straight to the next step. Cool beans. If you're wondering what are the things that I've just skipped over, so these are basically the steps that I've just done in this live without scrolling to the relevant step, on the step-by-step guide. But if you were to read it, it is completely the same content as what I've explained before in terms of, what is the origin, what is the content that we're seeing in the screen, etc. Cool. Okay, the last step is your second commit. So we've done our first commit. We've done our initial commit where we've committed our changes by, we've set up the web app. We've also edited index.jsp for the first time. We've committed those changes. And, Ruben says, Nat, thank you. This has been really interesting and engaging, albeit a bit ahead of where I'm at. That is all good, Ruben. Thank you so much for being here. I've got to dip now, but I'll catch you soon. Thanks again. I'll see you next time, Ruben. This is awesome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your good energy over here. I appreciate you pushing yourself a bit further, if this is a bit ahead. I can't wait for you to come back to this live and try this when you're like, I'm now ready. Okay, cool. Next thing, we're going to do our second commit. Gabrielle says, thank you, Nat. Saying thank you back. Keep your code commit open and switch back to the tab with Cloud9, which is what we've just done. Let's try editing our index.jsp file one more time. Find index.jsp in the file navigator and find a line that says, this is my Network web application working. Do you see that line? It's right over here. Oh, this is my web app. Oh, okay, you can see it now. This is my Network web application working. Find this line and add this line below. Okay, there's a whole new paragraph we're now going to add. So let's add that in. Done. Okay. Save your changes. Command S or Control S on your keyboard. And now let's head back to our code commit tab and refresh it. Okay. Let's head back to our code commit tab and press refresh. It says, do you see your changes? Do you see your changes in code commit's copy of index.jsp? Let's quickly dash over to index.jsp in our code commit repository. Do we see it? Let's see. It's not there. But why? I've already saved my changes. Why is it that I can't see it? There's, I've added this new paragraph that says, yo, if you see this line in code commit, your latest changes are saved in the origin. But I don't see this in code commit. That means my changes are not saved in the origin. How could this be? How could this be? I've pressed save. So what's happened? Okay, so you won't see your changes in the code commit tab yet because saving changes in the Cloud9 environment, which is what I just did, only updates the local repository. Okay, because we have two repositories. We have one that's local, kind of like your own space, and then the one that's in the cloud, that's in code commit. And when we press Command S, when we're just saving it, it saves in the local repository. What's so local? It doesn't save in the cloud. So this is like the same as if you were to download, something from Google Drive, okay, and you open it in your computer's like local Word text editor, like you open it locally in Word, Microsoft Word, or your Notes app, and you make those changes, and then you refresh whatever was in Google Drive and being like, hey, why isn't it updating? It's kind of like the same scenario here. You've only just saved it in your local repository. It's not really saved in the one that's in your origin yet. So now your work. I see. I think this line might be slightly out of place, but I'll put this in the right place in the step-by-step guide, but we'll just skip that for now. It is not relevant yet. Oh, because I've accidentally looked at the wrong panel. My bad. What I was actually trying to say is what I've just mentioned is, you won't see the changes in the CodeCommit tab yet because you've saved the changes in your Cloud9 environment only, and that means only the local repository is being updated. Okay. To make your changes visible in the CodeCommit repository over here, we need to explicitly send those changes from your local repository upstream, into the CodeCommit repository. Nair has made an awesome comment in the chat saying, yes, we have to commit it again to update our code repo as well. You're awesome. Thank you so much, Nair. That is absolutely it. So how do we do that? Let's head back to the Cloud9 tab. We've actually done this before, but we're going to do it again. We're going to do git add. I'm going to run git add in the terminal, right? And then, apologies. See, you'll see that the terminal has kind of told me off here just now. It says git add dot is not a git command. If you see that happening, it's because there's no space between add and my dot. So let's add that space in there. So git add space and then dot, enter. Okay, now there's no more issues. And then the next line, git commit. Again, commit is like pressing that save button. So we're pressing that save button, and we're also writing a message that says update index.jsp, because that was the file that we just updated. We just added this line to. There's even a little message back that says, oh yeah, you've changed one file in total. The file we changed was index.jsp, and he added 2 lines, which is exactly what we did. Because we added this line, and then we also added like a new empty line here at the bottom as well. And then next, git push. So let's push those changes over. Git push. Done. We've just pushed our changes over. So let's head back to the CodeCommit tab and refresh the page. Do we see those changes now? Do we see those changes now? Yes, we do. So now we see those changes because, as Nair has mentioned in the chat, we are committing those changes again. So we're sending the code upstream. And now we've committed the code, we've pushed it, we sent it upstream. It's with the CodeCommit repository, and now it's showing in there too. That's awesome. So let's take a screenshot of the CodeCommit page showing the updated index.jsp file. I love it. Let's take that screenshot right away. Cool. And let's head back to our documentation page over here. Head to the slide that's titled Git in Action in your documentation page. Paste that cool ass screenshot. Okay, you can make it look like this, in your screenshot. And let's fill out the prompts. That's awesome. So the prompt says, I wanted to see Git working in action. So which file did you change in Cloud9? What did you do? So I updated my index.jsp file by adding 2 new lines. Then I tried seeing these changes in my CodeCommit repository, but this didn't work because, why couldn't you see your changes right away just now? Why couldn't you? It was because, how should I best explain this? Because I had only saved these changes in my local repository instead of in my local repository without pushing the changes upstream. I finally saw the changes in my CodeCommit repository after, what did you have to do to push your changes? So after running the same 3 commands, Git commands, in my Cloud9 terminal. And what were those Git commands? Do you remember? They were git add, git commit, git push. The golden 3 commands that helps you put your changes, ready them for saving, actually press that save button, and then push those changes from your local repository up to the remote origin in the cloud. Cool. Done. So what was the point of all of this? We've actually just reached the last step now. We've pretty much wrapped up that last step of the project. And you might be thinking, what was the point of what we were doing in the past hour? Using a Git repository is incredibly common among developers. It's essential for tracking the changes you make to software projects. I can say this from experience that developers in all different kinds of teams and all different kinds of projects, all different kinds of companies are using Git and using Git repositories to track their changes and manage their project, as a team and collaborate. Google Docs and other shared document writers have been important for teams to track who's written what, avoid conflicts while working together, have version histories that you can roll back to. Git repositories are exactly like that. They bring the exact same benefits to a team working together and creating and managing code together. So we kind of just learned that this is the point of learning about Git and Git repositories, but how is that relevant to DevOps? Because at the end of the day, this is project number 2 in a DevOps series. So please know that Git lets teams make rapid and frequent changes, and then make sure that these changes are safe and trackable. This makes software development faster, it reduces mistakes, it aligns perfectly with DevOps goals of efficiency and reliability. And you will see that a lot of DevOps engineers are all about trying to figure out what is the best Git rituals in a team. When should you be committing? And when you commit your changes, what should the message be? And after you commit, when do you push those changes? Once you push them, who's the person that's actually going to be reviewing those changes and making sure that it works perfectly with the code that already exists? There's a whole lot that goes into actually these processes in a larger team scale, and that's where DevOps engineers and their skills really come in handy too. Okay, so we have just finished the last step of the main part of this project. Please take the time to wrap up your documentation because there are some nice juicy little prompts in the rest of this documentation too, for you to share your key learnings and for you to share your final thoughts about this project. And yeah, once you're all done, you'll be ready to share your documentation, share your work as well. So if you're feeling shy about sharing, that's all good. Just start from sharing it in the project page in the Nextdoor community, and you can just find that by clicking on that link here, and it pops up the all AWS projects page in the community. Scroll down to find the project that we've been doing, set up a Git repository, and you can post your documentation there. Have we had someone post a documentation yet? Not yet, actually. No one's posted a documentation in this project post yet. Would you be the first? Will we finally have our first project post? That'll be awesome. I would love that. And then once you're feeling a bit more confident, share it on LinkedIn. It is so easy. We have found a new way for you to share on LinkedIn that is incredibly easy because all you have to do is click here, click this link, and boom, a pre-filled post right here, ready for you to click post right away. And you can even click on the plus button and select add a document, and then you'll be able to click on, the documentation that you've just written. Oh, okay, I have an example documentation here by our good friend Lawrence. So for example, say I'm Lawrence, I will just, click the add document file, and I'll just upload my document here. You might actually even need to write a document title. So I'll just do, for example, Amazon Lex Chatbot Part 1, press done. And then again, you already have the pre-filled copy for your post. And then your documentation, when it's done loading, will literally pop up here, and it'll look like a very, very cool carousel that you can click through. just like this. So it's very, very easy for anyone in your professional network to read and see your work and see like, wow, this person has been working hard and they've been learning some new things in AWS. Lawrence is celebrating in the chat. Thank you so much for letting me use your documentation as the example, Lawrence. I appreciate it. All right, once you're done sharing, you can please delete your resources for today's project, okay, as we wrap up. How do we delete resources? I always like to think that the first thing you should do when you delete your resources is do it by yourself. Don't look at what's given in the guide. Just try deleting everything you've created today to make sure that you kind of have this mental tracker all the time that's going, oh yeah, I've created this, I should delete it later. Oh yeah, I've created that, I should delete it later. Because I feel like the most dangerous thing that can happen for your account is for you to accidentally leave things running in there that will end up incurring charges for your account. It's happened to me before. I've had to learn it the hard way, and now I'm much better at tracking the things I've created and making sure I delete all of them one by one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I delete my repository. So this is the cloud repository that I've created, the remote origin that's in the cloud. Let's delete that repository. We don't need it anymore. So let's delete it. Okay. Next thing, what else have we created today? Do you remember? Okay, the other tool that we've been using a lot in today's project was Cloud9. So head to the Cloud9 console, click on Cloud9, looking real cute and handy over here, and click select it. Okay, and then you can click here to delete the environment too. So let's type delete here. Now it's deleting. That was very, very quick. And were there any other resources we've used in today's project? So there is a hidden resource that is good to check as well. Sometimes this hidden resource gets deleted with your IDE, so you don't need to delete this because it gets automatically deleted with your Cloud9 environment, but it's worthwhile checking anyway. You might remember that when we were setting up our Cloud9 environment, we clicked Amazon Linux 2 as a platform. So Amazon Linux 2 would have ended up becoming the platform that has set up an EC2 instance that was running your Cloud9 IDE this whole time. So what that means is let's go to EC2 and let's check whether there was an instance that was created here made for running your Cloud9 IDE. So let's check. Okay, cool. No matching instances found. It's already been deleted. If you close that, just now there was a filter that's like instances that are running, and that's why we saw 0. But once I closed that filter, I said like, just give me all the instances. You'll see that there was something that was stopped, terminated, etc. So when we deleted our Cloud9 IDE, this was stopped and terminated for us automatically. So we don't need to delete it manually ourselves. That's great. I think that's it. Let me double check. Cloud9 console, yep, deleted the environment. EC2 console, yep, deleted the EC2 instance. It's already been deleted for me. CodeCommit console, deleted the repository. Tick, all done. So we have deleted everything we need to delete. You don't need to delete your IAM user because let's just log in to the next project with the user we've set up. It is free to keep your IAM user, so you can just leave it in your account. And that's a wrap. Oh my gosh, that's all done for today. Yeah, so that was project 2 done. Woohoo! Next up, we need to gather all the necessary pieces to build our Java Web Application Resource, a WAR file, which is where our app comes together. So this is where AWS Code Artifact comes into play. Think of Code Artifact like a giant toolbox where we can quickly grab all the bits and pieces or like the packages that our project needs to come to life. And make sure we always have the right tools ready to go. And Code Artifact is absolutely important to secure your web application as well, and make sure that anything in the public space that your application might be depending on, you always have a backup copy. If you're curious, what this project is like, this project is actually already available in the community. It was posted today. You can already find it in our all AWS project space, and you can find it right here. You can start the project right away. So I hope you enjoy that project. It is, again, another way for you to level up your DevOps CI/CD pipeline. All right, so today you've learned how to set up a CodeCommit repository. You've learned how to configure Git in Cloud9. You've created your Git identity. You initialized and configured your local repository that has been sitting in your Cloud9 environment. You made that first commit and push. If this was truly your very first time using Git add, Git commit, Git push, congratulations. That's awesome. And also, you also learned how to organize your project structure. For example, what was going on in the different folders in your web app, because you had to navigate through that in our Git commit repository. Gabrielle is such a G for saying, remember to change your IAM account password, because I actually made a mental note for myself to do that. So thank you so much, Gabrielle, for keeping me in check to do that. I will be doing that right after this live as well. Imagine if I changed my password on this live so everyone can see that new password I created. That would have been funny. But yeah, that is actually it for today. It is honestly amazing to me that all of these new learnings can be packed in a single project. And imagine, if you can learn this much in one project, imagine how much you can do in this entire series of 6 DevOps projects that come together to create that CI/CD pipeline. So I can't wait to see you in the next one, where we're going to upgrade it again with Code Artifact. And in the meantime, great work. Take a rest, give yourself a pat in the back, okay? And I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being in this live with me today. It has been an amazing energy, and I'm just super, super appreciative of each and every one of you. All right, see you in the community in the meantime, and hope to catch you again on Thursday. Oh, thanks, John. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thanks, Nair. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Bye. Thank you. Thank you to DKAMX as well. Shout out to you. Thank you to Uduak. Thank you to Masuma. Thank you to Anonymous Shimazu. Thank you to Gerald. Thank you to Ruben. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.